Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. Mitch, I know we are looking for a working title. This 38 episodes, we're still looking for a working title.
We don't want to rush things.
Name...
We don't want to rush things.
No, we're working it out. But we cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater. Life's a Beach?
Oh, that's a very upswing title. I kind of like it. It's summertime.
And then you die from global warming. So, yeah.
Speaking of which, or maybe you can do it, I just watched again on YouTube the opening number to Beetlejuice. It's a show about death. I mean,
yeah.
I'm sorry, some of us have that sense of humor. I feel bad for those of us who go to a show and actually think they're supposed to be respectful. You know, It's like we got to push the envelope. That's what theater does. And it's when you have the right sense of humor. And I know there are people, especially those who are deeply into their faith, who think that words and ideas should be perfect. But then theater may not be for them. Theater.
If you're working in the theater, you have to have a sense of humor because life's a beach.
Yeah, especially a beach, and especially the amount of money we make. Right?
Yes.
I mean, I feel for all the Writers Guild and SAG-AFTRA people, and I do sincerely. But their complaints are what we're making. You know, we're a freelance industry, and Broadway has unions. That helps tremendously. Speaking of which, one union finally got its contracts updated, hair and makeup. And if you've ever seen a Broadway show, you know there are at least 4 million wigs. You know, it's like even when you think everyone's using their real hair, it's not.
Mm-hmm. I know there's many moments where... Oh, sorry. I was going to say there are many moments where it just clicks in my head and I'm like, oh my God, that's a wig.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you start to think like, I think I was just kind of realizing how like in film, they'll do a cut and then like a makeup person comes over and touches up your face and all that. And I'm just like, okay, so what if they had to do a reshoot, right? They definitely need a wig because the hair wouldn't have been the same as it was, if it grows, if you cut it short. And sometimes you can tell when a film has been, a film has been in the can for a while and now the actor has long hair and you're like, wait a minute, what happened? Oh, that's right. These wigs. And so that's another expense. That
every time
if you don't account for it,
and they're major because wigs. It's not just a wig that you would buy in a store. I remember working on a show where someone said, "Well, there's a wig place down the block. We can probably buy one for $200." Yeah, that'll make it through 2 performances. These things get wasted, and it's 8 performances a week. And if your show is going to run forever and you want the perfect hairdo, and it has to be maintained every day, so you have staff, you buy wigs that are thousands of dollars to start with, and you can't rent them. You got to buy them. Well, you can rent them. Some hair artists will rent wigs out of their collection that they make up. But anyway, and the same thing with makeup, because in a show as opposed to a movie, you can be 25 years old at the beginning of the movie and 45 years old at the end of the movie. You're not wearing the same hair.
Yes.
right, and you're different color, and you see people go on television shows and they have brown hair when in the movie they had blonde hair. I mean, look at Barbie, right? My
Yeah.
God, you think
Yeah.
anybody in those wigs and makeup, that's them for real? Give me a break.
Yeah. Now I
Take
know
it a
you
step
can
further, even
rent it.
Oppenheimer. Go
A new
sing, go
wig,
ahead,
you are my
go sing.
love. That's that you have to sing. You have to sing. I'll cover you to your wig before you put it on.
There you go. And interestingly enough, let's be clear about this. Everyone who wears a wig, by and rightfully so, by health rules and therefore equity rules, you can't share a wig. You wear a bald cap because nothing
Hmm.
that is ever reused can touch the skin. So if
Hmm.
somebody's wearing a costume, they have to have a body, and they're sharing it with an understudy. They have to have some bodysuit and special underwear underneath it that prevents it
Yeah.
from touching two bodies. Again, more expenses
Hmm.
because you have understudies.
Yep.
So you can't use the same wig
Yeah.
with the understudy unless you have a cap, a skull
Well,
cap.
this is what I keep. This is what I keep saying. Like, I think. I think the general public needs to know more about what goes on behind the scenes. We can't keep this a secret anymore. I think perhaps that is the change that we need in theater because it's like, you know, for example, I I bought tickets to Merrily We Go Along, We Roll Along, Merrily We Roll
Roll
Along.
along.
Yes, I had to reschedule those tickets because I have a wedding. And so I'm trying to match it up with the pricing, and I'm thinking like, oh man, I already paid a lot of money for these tickets, and now to move them to a later date, I'm going to have to pay more money because I'm paying fees and the same seats in the same area on a different day are a different price. And
Mm-hmm.
so, some of that you can argue is a scandal, but the other part is like those tickets have to pay for a bunch of things, and so I do understand that, but I think it would be easier for us to, you know, why is it I can just go, I can see Barbie how many times I can see Barbie as many times over for the cost of one theater ticket. But the thing is, it's live, and then all of those people are live, and all of those people are getting paid to perform for you
You can go a
in that
step
moment,
further.
and you can't even see them behind the scenes. The
You
people
can
are
you
getting
can
paid.
watch, but you can watch YouTube for free. You can argue finances all the time. It's when do you decide, and this is each of our decision. When do you decide an experience is worth X amount of money? And it's not about supply and demand. Sometimes the best thing in the world doesn't catch on, and sometimes pieces
Yeah.
of crap catch on. But so people, I don't want to say streaming is free because if you put together Hulu and Netflix and Disney Plus and all those things, it costs a fortune, as does
Hmm.
cable TV. So it's not like it's free, um, but that's a lot cheaper than going to one Broadway show, especially if you're not sure you're going to like it.
Well, I
The
would
prop,
say it's a lot. It's inexpensive. It's not cheap.
what is
It's
inexpensive?
inexpensive.
What is?
The cost for us to tune into something,
Oh yes.
online or in a space. But still, even those things, like a YouTuber who puts together a 10-minute video that you find value in, it took them a couple of hours to put that together. There's a script there. That is a mini production. It just has one
Mm-hmm.
actor, the talent, and they're sitting in front of a camera that maybe costs way too much money. Maybe that camera has a teleprompter so that they don't have to look all over the place, and they also have lighting so that they don't look terrible, and all of those things are going into, again, I feel like we're just so used to things showing up for us that I think now we have to remind people that there's a whole lot that went on behind the scenes.
Well, I don't. Be honest with you, I don't think most people care that there's their expenses behind it. It's the same thing when you buy a Lexus versus buying a Toyota. Why is one 65,000 and one is only 20,000? There's a gigantic difference. And if you want to know what the difference is, great. I think certainly the theater is important to those of us who have ever worked behind the scenes. We know what goes into it, and the collaborative nature of it is so enticing. I am so proud of those productions that I was a small part of, right? So all of that means something, which means I want to see somebody else's work. But we have not in our society, or seemingly any society, put a financial value on art. And it could be physical art, it can be performing arts, it can be musical art. There are people, myself, you, and certainly a lot of people who go to the Met Opera who pay a lot of money. There's value for a limited number of us. The others, maybe they're going, I have to pay for my 4 children's dental bill, and I have no disposable income, and I'm already paying for TV or streaming because the kids have to watch programming. I'm going to stick with that for my entertainment. And so it doesn't necessarily become what's good, bad, or I know more about what's behind the scenes. It's I don't have any money. And I think it all will go, it falls, different people, look, everybody's got a different excuse. Some people, and I'm going to speak for my own family, with their children, they don't have an hour to go out. If they can get a babysitter to have dinner, which may be 45 minutes if they're lucky, that time then they have to travel there and back. I can't get them to go to theater even if I pay for it. So, so many different problems.
I was just talking about that. We have this mindset, I can't go to the gym. I don't have the time. But the gym doesn't need much of your time at all, especially if you live near the gym. And if you chose a gym that's not close to you, then you set yourself up for that.
True.
But yeah.
True. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a hardship. And I'll be honest with you, because I've been working on so many productions in the past few months, I've gone to half the number of shows that I wanted to. I hope they'll still be around later when work slows down. But there's still a phenomenal experience. I mean, watching television or streaming means nothing to me compared to most of the shows I see. But that's me.
Yeah. Well,
I still look for the discount.
Let's talk about some of that because the reason we are sporadic in this coverage is because we are working artists in the community. Mitch, there's so many. You're working on so many plays with the farm in play development, and then at the beginning of August, we took one of your musicals, and gave it a concert reading, and that was time consuming, very time consuming. I'm glad we were able to do it though, but it was time consuming.
Even though we concentrated most of the time in a week, the planning for it is consuming. It's all consuming, and kudos to you for producing this in Philly. I'm New York based. The show, of course, can go anywhere. I think we showed what good work can come out of the developmental process. I was very proud of what you did and the people you brought in, the wonderful cast. Of course, and by the way, this is an interesting factor right now, since so many, and I don't want to be a doomsayer, but since so many regional theaters are in trouble and small nonprofits, they came out of the pandemic with nothing in their coffers, some of them for their own fault and some of them not their own fault. But they're suffering, and so they're cutting back on their seasons if they have a season. They're trying to rent to other theater companies rather than produce their own work. Many of them, I hear from friends in the business, they're going back to the idea of doing developmental work rather than full productions, which for me makes me happy. It makes me very happy.
I've been trying to hand you some work.
Right. But the thing is, I don't know if they're serious about it, because so many theaters look at the developmental process as, we do a reading of a play once, and if it's not perfect, well, we gave it a try. And to me, developmental is a process that takes years. You work with someone with talent who has a basically good idea that, or something that interests you, and you make them rewrite it, and you do it again, and then you make them rewrite it again, and you have a team that works with them, but over a long period of time. And that's expensive for the writer, because they're not making money. And you still have to pay the actors, even if it's a tiny bit. You want to give them something. And you have to have a space to do it in. That could be rental costs, and on and on and on. But that's developmental, and it would be really sweet if we could get most of the regional theaters to commit to doing more and more and more new shows right from the beginning, and inviting the audience for free or for very little money because it's in development. And then eventually when you get, quote unquote, the hit, then you charge some money, to see the finished product, I guess. I don't know. But that's one of the positives I'm looking at. I just don't know that there are enough theater companies that are going to put, as they say, put their money where their mouth is. I would like to, the companies that are talking about doing developmental work, I really want to see it. There's so many good writers.
Let's, as a theater company who is, continuously looking at the limitations of our budget and our coffers, I think I'm gonna assume positive intent, and to give the benefit and say that these companies do want to be ambitious. They just can't count on the things that they counted on maybe 10 years ago. It's just not, maybe you had a benefactor that was your lead producer, and put money down so that you really didn't have to think about it too much. Because I'm sure all of our initial goals was, we want to engage the community that we exist in the conversation, and but we need people, we need supporters who want to help us. Bring those stories to a stage so that we can engage our community. And, every day we are thinking about every cent. And, I'm wondering if some of the organizations that are really struggling right now were, as much as I know the value of every single artist who is a part of every company and every production, I'm wondering if these companies were just too big to begin with, and now what they're realizing is that they can't have.
You don't have to. You don't have to wonder right. You don't have to wonder
as many people as they had on hand.
Right. We read the Public Theater, which was at one point the richest theater company in the world, just let 19% of their staff go. I don't want to bad mouth. There are good people at the top, the middle, and the bottom, but the
Mm-hmm.
salaries at the top, when you're letting 19% of theater workers who are struggling to pay their rent anyway, when you're taking over $1 million a year and you can't afford to keep 19% on at least at minimum wage, something's wrong. And
Yeah,
this is part of
but
the new normal we have to
however,
look
I
at.
will play devil's advocate for a
Please
second,
do.
um, because let's just say that you are a high paid artistic leader, and if you were to take a pay cut, you might be thinking, if you were to take a pay cut, all you're really doing is you're allowing these you're allowing you're making it so that you don't have to let people go, yeah, which is a great thing, but at the same time, it is a business, and you do have to figure out how your business can run efficiently, and perhaps maybe you have 10 more employees than you need.
Oh, that part I'm
And
not going to disagree. It has to be. I'm not saying you keep all 19% on for the hell of it. If you're going to
yeah.
do less productions and you need less people, then it's a business. You figure it out. Although nonprofit, hear the words, non-profit. So what is
Hmm.
the difference between Roundabout Theater, Manhattan Theater Club, Second Stage, the Public Theater, etc., etc.? What is the difference between some of their work and the commercial theater world? And there are answers to that, by the way. I don't mean to imply there aren't. But my
Hmm.
challenge to all regional and nonprofit theaters is, what makes you different that you don't have to pay taxes? Commercial producers work their butt off, as do nonprofit producers. Okay? So
Yeah.
now we have equal work. Why is one person on Broadway able to make $1 million because that's how much his show's making, plenty to do to be able to pay him his salary or his royalties, versus a nonprofit who is begging donors for money? They're begging, and they're making 60% or 50% of their needed resource money. They're making it from donors, and then they don't have to pay taxes. There's something wrong, and there has been for a very long time, with that business model. I'm not saying I have the answers, although, and my favorite phrase, uh, my less than humble opinion, there are plenty of answers to this, and there are some theater
Yeah.
companies that I would point to. I don't. I want to. It's not about embarrassing them. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know the ins and outs of every theater company, but there are some that have found ways to do it and are
Yeah.
succeeding. And by the way, when you succeed as a nonprofit, people want to give you more money. So, as a donation. So, how far do you go? Do you need the big problem? And Darnell, you're going to know this because you run a theater. The building. Are we really
Hmm.
stuck with paying the mortgage on a building that we only use part of the year? We house our staff there the rest of the year, but we don't have shows there every week of the year. And I don't mean yours personally. I'm just talking about that there are plenty that just keep a
Hmm.
building open to house their marketing department. And that's a
Yeah.
lot of money. The question is, do we rent? For example, I'll say I know of one developmental show. Yeah, they weren't building a big set, but they were developmental show, and they rented a rehearsal studio and they cleaned it up, and they invited people in there, and they only did the show for one weekend, but it was packed, and it cost them relatively next to nothing. And the week after their show's over, they had no expenses. So,
Mm.
again, every theater has a different model, a different need. If the community, if they're doing educational things every week in between the weeks that they're doing production. Lots of different ways to use your space, but is it worth the cost of your mortgage? And certainly in Manhattan, well, I'm going to go, I just need this to be clear because a lot of people don't know history. The Public Theater, which is still my heartthrob, okay, so I love this place. They have a 6-theater building that used to be a major library in New York that they rent from New York City for $1 a year. There is no mortgage on that place, and they have 6 theaters in it, plus a nightclub, and they can, a gorgeous lobby, whatever they're doing. So for them, it's not about mortgage. So where's the money going? Right? And I'm not challenging them that way. I don't really know their budget, but they spend a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that was going to be my comment for the earlier thing about a leader making a lot of money. The development department is not saying, well, perhaps if the artistic leader took a pay cut, we wouldn't have to be as aggressive about fundraising. The other thing is these
that's not what they're
foundations.
Paid to say.
No. Well, these foundations and the grant opportunities prefer you to have some kind of infrastructure. You can't just run a theater company from your desk at your
now you can
apartment.
We've all gone remote from the pandemic, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't meet
we're
together.
Able to.
Yeah,
we're able to, but that doesn't mean like NEA is going to.
No, but there are
transfer $1 million to your account.
They're not going to do that anyway. There are 5 theaters I can name right off the top of my head here in New York that rent an office, which is different than renting a big theater space. I'm not saying you can't have a home base, but when they need a theater, they go out there and they either rent it or or they have a relationship with some other theater that they're sharing the space, whatever it is. I'm not trying to, like I said, I don't have the answer for each theater. They don't all have to be the same. My question is, if you are nonprofit and not paying taxes, how are you different from the Broadway producer who is a commercial entity and his or her entire purpose is to make profit? How are you different?
True.
And I challenge it. And there are answers to this, by the way, and because I've worked in nonprofit half of my life. So there are good people doing amazing things, especially educationally, and putting on great shows, which may not, at least, here we go back. There were shows that were big risks, that some of which ended up major hits, but they only exist because someone was willing to take the risk. And if you're a commercial producer, you don't think you can take a risk if you're going to spend that much money. Nonprofit, the idea was, we're going to do things that a commercial producer would not do. And that is our purpose. We're going to bring art in a different format and bring in an audience that appreciates the fact that we're taking some risk. And every now and then, something like Rent or A Chorus Line, even, that came out of nonprofit. You get, for colored girls, best example in the world. For colored girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow is enough, by Endazaki Shange, 1978 or 9. 8 black women screaming and yelling at black men. Who's going to put that on Broadway? Especially in 1979. Public Theater did. They tried it out off Broadway. It was a massive artistic hit. They moved it to Broadway, and no one thought they could bring in an audience. And they ended up making a profit on Broadway, which went back to the nonprofit theater and not into anyone's pocket. That's nonprofit. I challenge all of our regional theaters to say, okay, this isn't about money. This is about What risks, artistic risks, do we want to take? And that is going to convince me and other people to give them money, not the other way around. Keep our buildings standing, right? I don't care about our buildings standing. That's not going to make me
Somebody
give you
is like, I would like to chime in about what you just said.
Go ahead. Well, that's why we're talking,
that's
right?
what I'm saying.
I know.
The phone.
Oh,
The phone.
yeah, we don't have
what did he just say?
How dare he? And I know plenty of people who will challenge me, and they should. I'm telling you that
callers, listeners, if you can find the number, call in.
But let me be clear. I'm a proponent of Broadway and the commercial theater. I am also a proponent of nonprofit. The difference is both of them, the pandemic showed us where they're at fault. And I think we have the opportunity, if we don't wait too long, to fix it, both of them, and their relationship with each other. Oh, one of the things I literally just read today was the idea that nonprofit and regional theater is the ecosystem of the theater that goes to Broadway. That's where they try things out. Well, if there are no theaters taking risks and trying new shows, as opposed to just doing shows that we already know, that have already been a hit on Broadway, if they stop doing that because they run out of money, then where do the new shows come from? And the person I was reading today that had written this article was claiming we're going to feel this 2 or 3 years from now, that we will notice that there is not enough new product. And that's why we should ask our nonprofits to do more and more developmental work. It'll save them money. It will also keep the ecosystem working. I think that's a great idea.
Perhaps that is why the public has to, scale back by 19% to continue to bring forth what they bring forth. Shakespeare.
I buy what you're saying.
Shakespeare in the Park is free. It's free. It's like and so. Like, we're never solving problems, we're presenting more questions, really. It's like, okay, to keep those 19% of people, do you charge $5 for Shakespeare in Clark Park? In the park. I'm sorry, we have a park here too, Shakespeare in Clark Park here.
most cities do. Most cities do.
Little shout out to Shakespeare in Clark Park. Yeah. But Shakespeare in the Park, so do you cut back by 19%, or do you start charging for Shakespeare in the Park?
You want my answer? Of course, I'm not in favor of charging for Shakespeare in the Park.
Yeah. And then also, I would say, there is a justification for artistic leaders to make what they make, considering what they oversee.
And
for example,
I will disagree with you. How do you like that?
For example, if you, I don't know how many people work at the public, but they're all under this leader. And so a lot of that factors into how much they ultimately make. And how, and how many locations they have. Is another thing too. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying, I'm not even talking about the amounts.
Right. Well, that the
artistic leadership makes.
We're agreeing. There. I'm not saying they shouldn't be paid. I'm not saying it shouldn't be a decent amount. Yeah. I'm just saying there comes a point in which it seems obvious. Our entire society, and here we go, politics. Our entire society, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. The gap is widening. In the theater, where we are supposed to be more empathetic, I think that's one of the things we learn about from the shows that we see and work on, and we learn about other people and how people interact. It's one of the great lessons that come from working in theater. Very fortunate. So out of that, do we not see the inequities of people working of having 20 unpaid interns at a theater and a leader making over $1 million. There's a balance at which you just go, it's not like I think our leaders shouldn't make money. Of course, we all want to get there. But but I'm not sure that any particular amount coming out of a pandemic when everyone is struggling and regional theater after regional theater is either closing, firing their leaders, the leaders are quitting, they're struggling, and a few of them are not. A few of them are doing okay. Where are the lessons? What do we find at those theaters? I'm looking for where are the think tanks? Where are the people discussing it? And there are people. There are. That's where my comments are coming from. I've been reading these people, so I'm agreeing with them. I just think I got in a big argument the other day with a good friend of mine just about all of this. He was challenging the thought that anything, and now I'm going to take it a whole different place, that anything in the theater needed more diversity and inclusion. This is someone who's worked in the theater for decades. He said, we're already doing it. It's already there. And you sit there and you just listen to this going, show me examples other than Hamilton on stage. Hamilton behind the stage isn't. And I don't mean anywhere, please. I'm not trying to attack them at all. They're wonderful people and blah, blah, blah. I have to be careful. We're naming names, and I don't mean and the public the same way. The public's a wonderful institution. Sure, we have. I just haven't said their names.
We just pointed out that the public, made some.
By the way, interesting thing, and I don't want to put a value on this. There will be no Free Shakespeare in Central Park next summer. They are renovating the theater. Again, it's a building. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't need renovation. Maybe it's structural. Maybe the place has been there a long time. Maybe it requires it. But at the same point, at a time that you're letting 19% of your staff go, is that the right place to spend your money and then not have a show for that summer for the public?
Is the 19% of the staff?
I don't know.
At the
I don't know. This is where anyone can claim that I'm talking out of ignorance. I'm just talking about the image that comes across to me.
And we're only talking about the public just because that they have.
I could go to all the others and have similar.
They have such a presence, but yeah, I mean these are the questions. And sometimes here's the other thing. There are sometimes in tough times, there is an encouragement to build up instead of scaling down.
Right. I buy that.
Where, everything is struggling. Now's the time to push forward some bold ideas, and continue to build that excitement. And so it's tough. Ultimately, I feel like, so I remember I worked at an organization where the CFO, as long as I had been there, always said to me, I always budget conservatively, no matter how good we did the year before. I always budget conservatively because we never know what's going on and we never know what's going to happen. And, this organization, which has an endowment, wants to ensure that it's going to be around for years and years to come. So, arguably blowing your wad on keeping a few people today, may not sustain you as long as your board and your leadership had intended that your organization would stay.
As devil's advocate as I'm trying to be here, and I hope our audience is allowing me that. My challenge to that is also that contributors, nonprofit investors who are actually just giving money in order to get a deduction, or because they care, and there are plenty of those. They are more likely to give for a capital campaign that's going to put a theater together that their name may go over the aisle or a seat or the whole theater than they are for a season of new plays. And
or bathroom urinal.
Thank you. And there are those. I can name them. But
the Johnson.
Yeah, that's a good one.
The Johnson. But it's a Philadelphia institution.
Saying we need a song right now. Well, you need something.
Something from Urinetown, quick.
There you go. And do you remember anything from Urinetown? I couldn't sing anything right now, and I loved the show. Anyway,
that's not one I keep in the canon. Not for any reason. It's just I have some go-tos. There isn't anything from Urinetown. It's just because Urinetown hasn't been. I can't think of the last time Urinetown was produced here, and whether I saw it or not. So I think there's a handful of musicals that are fresh in my mind. Those
I think
tend to come up without
is
any
a
thought.
Big college production show. I think, but and thinking back how long ago that was. Wow. But at the same point, now let's talk about what shows ought to be done and how we convince contributors to support it. Obviously.
Well, before it.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, I feel like this is an internal question too. Like, what should be on the stage isn't necessarily what the paying audience wants to see. So there is a question of, are we trying to force a certain type of theater even though people are not turning up for that theater, or what?
Mm-hmm.
Because like there are companies here that are more on the traditional side of the canon,
right?
Here in Philadelphia, and there is an audience for that. It's the new work that, even though there is an audience for the new work, it's not as great as the audience for the canon.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so sometimes I can see how the argument would lead you to say, like, oh, so what, are you just trying to stuff a certain kind of art down our throats? Like, that's not what we want. That's not what we're turning up to see.
That's assuming that money is the be all end all in this. And I do agree. Listen, I'm a son of Broadway, right? I get it. My whole job was to make sure we made as much money every week as possible. That was my job. I get it.
Yeah.
I love having a hit. I wish everything were a hit. And I still question when you're talking non-profit.
Yeah.
And you're not paying taxes. What is your purpose? And we have allowed it doesn't mean you can't ever do something fun, but there are new fun things. Is it the purpose? And by the way, for example, Lincoln Center, which is a nonprofit, funny that it is, but Lincoln Center Theater, they do a lot of revivals. Okay, so your purpose can be, we're doing the American canon. We are bringing back things that were, if that's your purpose and you're doing that as a nonprofit, my only question would be, do you need tax help in order to do that? That would be a question.
Yeah.
And if you're doing educational things with it, if you have other programs, maybe that's your excuse. But in general, in every community, if you are in Louisville or in the Guthrie up in Minneapolis, it's your community. Are you giving them variety, or are you giving, which may be an excuse also, but how do we support all kinds of theater and not just our personal theater? Right? So
Sure.
many of, and this is what's going on right now, a lot of our artistic directors of nonprofits are either quitting or, as they say, being fired quitting. Like they're being told, if you don't get this together, you're out, and so they just decide to quit. That comes when you have no money in the bank and you're being told, do something spectacular. We have to keep the theater alive, and many of our business plans didn't include suffering. It was, let's make money. And I question whether or not we take things back to the streets. A great example in New Haven, and I'm losing the name of the theater. Why am I losing it? Very famous theater there that used to work out of Yale that has gone to the streets. They gave up their permanent home and they are renting different locations all throughout the city and doing different shows in each location. Now, whether that model works, I have no idea. But they're taking their shows to the community. And they found, I gather, enough spaces to do it. So, one, they don't have to pay a mortgage. They don't have to hire a custodian. Somebody does.
Was that Long Wharf?
Long Wharf, thank you. I could not think of it. Phenomenal theater with phenomenal history. And this was not after the pandemic. They decided to do this before the pandemic. So this is now their concept. I just challenge everyone to think outside the box. That this is when you're nonprofit. If you're commercial, I get it. You have a bunch of investors. All they want to know is have a hit. Now,
well, that is a good that is a good thought. That if you believe in your organization, can your organization function without brick and mortar?
Yeah, well, obviously you have to have some, but you don't have to own it. And I get that over the years we'd want that because then you spend less time looking for a place, blah, blah, blah. And you have more control over it. But then my challenge is, if you own a place or control a location, fill it up 52 weeks a year. And even if you don't make...
But then you're spending a lot of time trying to fill your space and less focus on your... your season, like your.
But that is your season. Your season, and by the way, 52 weeks of what? It can be educational things. I know that your theater has a camp coming up. That's absolutely valid. The theater is being used. By the way, there are theaters which open up their space to the general community for their use when they don't have anything. That's still a valid way to use your space. You just don't close the door.
Isn't that what Signature is
let's not get it, except
season?
they're not. And let me, while we're dropping names, Signature is not doing a single show this season. Not one single show. They're only renting out. And they will start with the season in 2024. That's because they rightfully figured out they had no money. But meanwhile, their executives are getting full salary. And I question, well, you don't have any shows this year. Why are you getting full salary? And, they could argue, I get the point, they work hard. I'm not going to argue that because I know I worked hard every moment I worked on a show or in a theater. There was always work to be done. So I don't want to argue that. I just think we're nonprofit. We need to think differently than commercial.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Or we just need money from the government.
Government and some very rich people. And by the way, let's sing her praise. Luester Mertz, Mertz. Here was a woman who was on the chairman of the board of the New York Shakespeare Festival at the time that a chorus line came around. And besides being a big donor, she personally wrote the check to move a chorus line from off-Broadway to Broadway. And she wrote it as a donation, not an investment. One check, one person said, this show will fund all the shows for the next 20 years at the Public Theater. I'm going to give it as a gift. And by the way, it worked. It worked. So we need, let me encourage, if anyone's listening who's got money, we need you. And may I encourage you to help all of us who are trying to develop shows. It costs so little to develop them, but it costs something because people have to go home and eat. So, the writer, the actors. I mean, I'm not even talking about the managers. I'm talking about the artists. So please, people, find money. And our government's not going to do, excuse my expression, they're not going to do shit for us in a very long time. England is pulling back. They used to subsidize everything. Art is not valuable to most people. And that's a very sad state of affairs. Anyway, I'm supposed to be positive at this point. What positive things can we say?
Well, a positive thing is, even through all of this uncertainty, there are still artists creating work, creating art, and that is the positive that gives us hope, even though it is the future is still uncertain. At least there are artists who are aware that it's not about content. It's not, I said pipeline earlier and something else, and it's not so much that, it's that just because I mean, art thrives when times are tough. And so perhaps now is the time to start rebuilding the canon, or just contributing to the canon with new art. And
I'm hoping it's got to be those nonprofits that exist that have to step forward and say, we're looking for artists. We're looking for creative souls, and we're going to help you, not by giving you a lot of money, but we're at least going to help you with the process. And here's a pittance, at least you can eat for one night and get a free dinner. We need, and by the way, almost everyone I know in the theater would be willing to do that. I'm trying to figure out why they're not. It's a strange thing. Maybe we're first reinventing ourselves. I don't know.
If you don't put your money where your mouth is, Mom's going to kill me.
Good choice.
Mom's going to kill me. You don't know how many times I try to weave that into something.
All right. Well, let's end it on something very positive. There are some amazing shows to see out there. And the new season starting in September, at least in commercial world, looks very bright. There are a lot of interesting shows coming up, and a lot of shows you can support. The other thing, which I guess we should say for our next podcast, an interesting problem. I saw an off-Broadway musical here called Rock and Roll Man. And there's a lot right with it and a lot wrong with it. But you could tell, they put a TV commercial on, they tried to blitz it. The audiences weren't having it. They didn't show up enough to pay for that show. And the producers, I guess because they loved it, put more money into the marketing. And one of the lessons I've learned on Broadway from all these years is you can't market your way into a hit. And it's that last ditch effort where you think all of a sudden we show you a couple of people singing in a TV commercial.
We say as Barbie
Yeah.
continues to sell out.
Well, but Barbie was a hit. That's marketing in advance.
But they marketed the shit out of that.
Yeah.
And it's still marketing. I saw a thread today that Barbie has even saturated into the wizarding world. There were several graphics of all of the main characters in the Harry Potter series, all dressed in pink, and they looked fabulous. I was like, I would love to see that. I would love to see that.
You may get the chance.
I know.
Anyway,
I was going to say, something about, Broadway and how, I guess if people are looking for feel good, jukebox musicals, like, is that a bad thing?
It is if that's a majority of Broadway.
Or maybe they are. Maybe those are the ones that should be. They're so good that they have a limited time, and then they go on tour and they continue to, be a hit all over the country. And
as long as the audiences pay their money to go see it and it's making a profit on Broadway, it will stay there. That's just the nature of the game. But it is. We have enough empty theaters on Broadway to bring in some new stuff. I just would like to see the most interesting.
Yeah. Well, in our upcoming episodes, we'll talk more about what is coming to the stages and what we're looking forward to. I'll tell you right now that I'm going to see the Lion King this week at the Academy of Music.
25 years, and it's still the number one show on Broadway over Hamilton.
Crazy,
making more money than Hamilton.
Yeah. Honestly, this is the first time I've seen it on stage.
You're kidding.
Nope. Well, that's technically not true. I saw a preview when the Kimmel Center was about to open. They had an event where they were showing us what was coming in that season. So I did get to see a performance, but I still can't believe that it's been that long and I haven't seen it. I don't know why. I feel like when I get to New York, I look for something that's new or newish. Like I haven't seen
You're caught. Musical or play?
It's a musical. I'm drawing a blank.
Love?
South Park.
Book of Mormon.
Book of Mormon. I don't know. I drew a blank there. I haven't seen Book of Mormon live. I knew it was a hit, and because I knew it was a hit, I was like, what else?
Got it.
I was like, they're not having a problem selling tickets, so I will go find. I'll go see something else. And so I saw a lot of things that really needed us to be in the theater. I guess I don't know, because I guess I got comfortable just knowing they would be there.
And also, it comes down to, at least for me, it comes down to shows that may be short-lived, and they can still make money, but shows that are short-lived, I want to see because they go away. The other ones become like, I always know Disney World will be in Orlando. Well, who knows if DeSantis kicks them out, but they'll be there. So it's not that I don't want to go to Disney World. It's just not a priority. It's the same thing. Lion King, which I have seen. I have seen all the hits, but they were there. Phantom of the Opera, it took 6 years before I went to see it. It's not, I didn't need to rush there, just like you said. I will see it. But meanwhile, there are other shows that are only going to last 3 months, and they sound really interesting. I want to go to those, so I get the most experience I can.
And I also feel like, especially, sometimes you want to see that original cast. You want to see the work that they did to get this to opening night. and you don't want to miss
So good.
that. But if you've already missed that, you're like, you know, it's not a big deal. Like, you know, who I don't know who's in Book of Mormon right now, you
Hmm.
know, and not to say that they don't matter, but I think that is a draw when it comes to Broadway. Like, you know, I do love the shows that you know allow themselves to have a little bit more of a life by you know breathing some fresh talent into them. You know, I do appreciate that. It's like, oh, okay, let's see how they tackle this, because that is similar to regional theater. You know, we go see companies who produce several you know several versions of the same show because we want to see how they do
Hmm.
it. So that's kind of a thing that I do appreciate.
All right.
Yeah. So I don't know,
Next
but
time, next week we will continue.
yeah. But next time we'll talk more about what's coming and what to look forward to. But that's the business of theater,
Yay!
a working title. I'm Darnell
Mitch
Radford,
Weiss.
and we'll see you at the theater.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnell Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.